Well, good afternoon, YouTube. G36TN pilot here. We got an IFR flight plan this morning. We're taking off at KROG, Romeo Oscar Golf, and we are headed to KHOT, Hotel Oscar Tango. We have a overcast day. We chose to go IFR because we thought there would be some weather along the way, and so we, at this point, are on our rollout. As you can see, we just took off. We're still talking to tower right now. And once we get taken off here shortly, they'll get us switched over to approach. In Rogers, they've actually updated the departure. I have to look that up real quick because it was a little different when I went off to take off this time. I wasn't quite familiar with it. It used to be called the Rogers 3. I'm looking on Foreflight here real quick. And departure procedures out. It's called the Rogers 4. Not quite sure why they changed it from Rogers 3 to Rogers 4. Needless to say, we took off on runway 20. That's a climbing left turn to 3,000 feet on a 183 heading. And then it says the words thence ... which essentially means the approach controller will tell you what to do next. So we take off here and we're in the climb. One of the things we do, obviously, in the climb with this particular Bonanza, since this Bonanza is turbo normalized, a lot of people ask this question on our YouTube channel. We go full throttle, which is about 29.5 or so manifold pressure on takeoff. We go full RPM, which is about 27 RPM, 2,700 RPM. And we go full mixture, of course. Now, regardless of altitude, whether we're at sea level or whether we're taking off out of Eagle, Colorado at 7,000 whatever feet, that's the settings. Since it's turbo normalized, this particular aircraft, you don't have to essentially change or lean the mixture at all because of the turbo. And you'll essentially go full throttle, full prop, full mixture, and you'll stay that way all the way in the climb. So as you can see here, we're climbing pretty quickly. I think we were climbing about 11 or 1,200 feet a minute here. Not a windy day at all because this was early in the morning. And we're going to climb up just below that particular cloud deck that you see there. We were climbing at a pretty good clip. But when you take off at a higher altitude airport like Eagle, Colorado, for instance, the same rules apply. You go full mixture, full prop, full throttle, all the way up till whatever altitude you're doing. I remember one time we took out of there, and it was in September. I think it was September of 2019. No, 2020. And, you know, I'd never taken off at Eagle, Colorado before, so it was interesting. I was going to fly some sort of convoluted approach or departure procedure. And so I had intended to do that. I told Tower that's what I was going to do. And they said, well, why don't you just take off, turn around, and climb straight up? So I said, kind of nonchalantly, I said, you can do that? And they said, well, yeah, your plane's turbo normalized, didn't it? I said, well, yeah. And they said, yep, just take off on this runway, do a 180, and climb straight up over the mountains. So that's what we did. Since the airplane is turbo normalized, we can climb straight up, and we had no problem making altitude. So as we're in the climb here, even though we're an IFR flight plan, we're going to the specific altitude. I think it was 5,000 feet this particular morning. And you know, you're doing your monitoring of the turbulent temperatures and the CHTs and the EGTs. We always use above about 2,000 or 3,000 feet. We do an auxiliary fuel pump on low. And then as it goes a little bit more and more, we're kind of watching the CHT to not climb over 180 degrees. We'll kick that into high during that climb. And it'll keep that CHT below 180 degrees, which is great. You're burning about 30 gallons an hour, 34, I think, gallons an hour in the climb. But you're in a turbo, so you're climbing pretty darn fast. So you'll get to altitude pretty quick. Well, it looks like we're leveling off here. Just about up to altitude. So we're getting our autopilot and everything situated here before we sit back in the cruise. And we're going to cruise on to Hot Springs, Arkansas. This was a work morning, so I had one of my staff members in the back of the plane. We can't see because it's obviously tinted windows, but right here I'm going into the cruise procedures. So the first thing we do is we leave the throttle, the manifold pressure alone. We leave it at full manifold pressure. We bring the RPMs back to about 2,500 feet, or excuse me, about 2,500 RPM. And what that does is kind of spins that prop back just a little bit, and we set it at 25 for cruise. And then we'll bring our fuel, our mixture, down to about somewhere between 15.5 and 17, somewhere in there. Those seem to be really good cruise settings for this particular aircraft. And that's running lean of peak, of course, regardless of altitude, whether I'm at 20,000 feet or whether I'm like this at 5,000 feet. So we're in the cruise. We're going to cruise a bit, and then here shortly I'll pick this up and we're going to fly a full IFR procedure with a hold and a procedure turn. So stay with us. Well, welcome back, YouTube. We are set up now for a full IFR procedure. We're going to fly the Rnav05 into Hot Springs, Arkansas today. And as you can see, I'm kind of adjusting the iPad in front of you to set that up. And the iPad procedure that we have pulled up matches what you'll see on the MFD screen. I'll put that up over here to the right so you can see that. We're flying in from the northwest. We're flying to a point called Edgerev. Edgerev is one of the IAF or initial approach fixes for this particular approach into Hot Springs, Arkansas. And so we fly past that point to enter our procedure turn and our hold here. Obviously, if you're an IFR rated pilot, you got to work on those holds. You got to have a couple of them or so every 6 months. So here we're turning onto a 233 heading, 233 degrees away from the approach. And we're going to do a 180 at the end of this. I think it's a 1 minute time frame. And you can see the plane flying this through its autopilot. We're using the autopilot here on a GFC 700 autopilot. This aircraft is equipped with a G1000 NXI system. We upgraded from the standard G1000 system when we purchased this aircraft a couple years ago. Wings Avionics in Fayetteville, Arkansas, KFYV, I believe is their code. Wings Avionics, a gentleman by the name of Brady at Wings Avionics is who did our upgrade. And they do fantastic work there. I can't recommend them enough. I always try to do that for them. So this system, along with the GFC 700 autopilot, just flies an absolute rail. It's like you're a train on rails here, flying this particular procedure. So it's, in a lot of the ways, I literally call it cheating. So what we're doing here is we're flying the outbound 233 radio. We're going to turn inbound to a 053 heading in just a minute. Now we're up. They had us, I think, at 4,000 feet. You'll notice that the edge rev point on this IFR plan was supposed to be at 3,100 feet. And then by the time I get to the final approach fix, it goes down even further. So we kind of had to, once we turn this corner here in just a minute, we kind of had to start down rather quickly. I got into about an 800 foot per minute descent, trying to get back down to the appropriate altitude to intercept those approach fixes. But we're at 4,000 feet right now, which is fairly high. Generally, this is flown at about 3,100 feet or 3,000, if I'm not mistaken. Because you go from I think you go from 3,000 feet at edge rev to 2,300 feet at the next approach, the final approach fix. And so it's only about 700 foot drop. Well, I was at 4,000 and had to get down to 2,300 feet. So that's a pretty big, obviously a pretty big change. But again, if you just look at the plane and how the autopilot's flying, and it's absolutely like it's flying on a railroad track. I mean, it just doesn't deviate. We were blessed this morning with some really good wind, which was, fantastic. But if you're a new IFR pilot, having a fantastic autopilot like this that you can essentially just manage is just essential to being able to build your confidence in terms of flying IFR. So we're rolling out here. You may be able to see off in the distance, I think we're a good, 15 miles or so from the runway here. But you may be able to see the airport off in the distance here. I think we were crabbing just a little bit, but not very much here. So switching to an internal view, you can see me. What I'm doing on the right is I'm kind of managing that flight plan over there. I like to have the IFR plan on my iPad right in front of me. Now I can have this same view on that right side panel if I want with the G1000 NXI system, but it's kind of redundant. I like this FPL flight plan mode here because what it does essentially is it allows you to see your waypoints, see your altitude fixes and your changes, which is just integral for this type of flight plan. Understanding altitude-wise where you're at, where you need to be, it shows or depicts all those waypoints just beautifully. So I really kind of prefer that view, even on a super clear day like this. I just I tend to prefer that view a lot. But you can put what's on the iPad on that screen on the right there, but it's kind of redundant. I don't think it really helps a whole lot to have that view, but I prefer that view there. Also, I'm pointing out my altitude fixes on the G1000. We're trying to get closer to. There you go on the right. What I'm doing is dialing up the same approach fix that you see, the same chart that you see on the iPad. Here's another view that you can see. This is a longer view, but it's kind of neat how it works. What you see essentially is the vertical flight path is the way I should say that. So if you're, in total IMC, this is a great way to be able to see what's going on, what's in front of you, how high you are off the ground, if there's any obstacles or all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fantastic. Now, as we kind of get everything set up, looking out the screen, you can see there's a fog layer there. Thankfully, that fog layer didn't extend over the runway or into any area of the landing environment, which is great. I think we're about 9 miles out now. We've made up some pretty good ground, and it was a super smooth flight. There's a great view of some of the mountains over to the right, and you can see some of the fog layer right down there, just in front of the wing there. So, beautiful morning for this, and obviously, not having a true IFR day down here. But it's really good practice. I think that understanding the systems of the aircraft is pivotal here. Understanding how the G1000 works, how the autopilot works, how the program the appropriate Rnav approaches. All of those things are really, really, really important. And so, if you can do that without too much trouble, and you have sort of muscle memory for what switches need to be switched on when and where, this is a great way to do that. So we've hit the final approach fix, which is called IRJEX, I-R-J-E-X, and we are accepting the glide slope, intercepting the glide slope, and starting to descend at this point in time. This is also the point in time when I intercept this glide point that we lower the gear, and we typically will engage the first degree of flaps in a Bonanza. We were pretty fast at the time because I had just gone from 4,000 feet to 2,300 feet. So I went ahead and pushed that prop forward, which changes the pitch on the prop, and it will slow the plane down a good deal, which can be very beneficial, especially if they've kind of, which in this case they did, they kind of jam you right into a runway. There's some of the beautiful water that surrounds Hot Springs. It's a beautiful area. If you've never visited Hot Springs, I highly recommend it, but their lakes that they have in the rivers around there are just gorgeous. Of course, Hot Springs is also widely known for the Oakland racetrack, which coincidentally we got to visit a couple weekends ago, and it was just fantastic. We really enjoyed it. And I believe I only lost $22, so I think that was a win in terms of racing at a horse track. So the switches you see me switching now, those are my check boxes, are essentially my check and balance system. We have a paper system that we use that I've laminated as well, but Missionary Bush Pilot turned me on to that box right there. You can buy one for 99 bucks, and it really helps you with your checklists because there's literal switches for when you do particular things. Straight ahead, you can see runway 5 off in the distance just across the river basin, and that's what we're aiming for here. Beautiful morning for this too. The weather was just gorgeous. It wasn't nice back in Rogers when we left. And I think this was just under an hour or so for the flight time, so it wasn't terrible wind one way or the other, which is really nice. But here we are coming in over the final approach. This is short final here, and there's a nice little river that goes right through there. It's part of the lake, I believe, and it's a beautiful, beautiful lake. Excuse me. Arkansas's head football coach Sam Pittman lives on this lake when he's not obviously coaching up at Fayetteville at the University of Arkansas. Here we are getting closer. We're on final. There's a little highway that runs right across here that we literally drive on every time we come into town. There you see a good view of it there as the car's running underneath. To get to town, you kind of go back around the airport, and then you got to find that little highway there, which is just off the edge. So we're landing a little long today because I was trying to get a little further down the runway. Because our turnoff here at this particular airport to get to the FBO is down a ways, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense just to land right on the numbers. Just kind of carry it and float it on down. Works really, really well. And then we hold back pressure. You can see me holding back pressure on the yoke. That keeps the wheels, the front wheel of the nose gear up as high as possible and takes the pressure off the nose wheel. That way you don't have as much wear and tear. That nose wheel is just nowhere near as sturdy as the main landing gear, so you always got to kind of watch that. So anytime I land, I try and land on just the mains, and I keep that nose wheel off the runway as long as I can, essentially until the plane runs out of energy and that nose wheel drops. So we're getting off here on Echo, and We're going to cross that threshold there, and then you take a ride over to the FBO. It's a really nice FBO. The guys that work there are fantastic. If you need rental cars, if you need courtesy vehicles, if you need fuel, if you need maintenance, they can help you out with all that stuff. We really appreciate them. I work with these guys a lot out here. Been coming here for my job for many years, and really appreciate what they do. All right, we'll shut off the iPad there so we can get a more clear view of the area. There we go. And this was a busy morning because there was a big race, a derby race coming in tonight. So there's about 50 planes on the ramp this morning. And you can see the line crew straight ahead. They had me pull straight up there, and eventually they parked me. We were only here, I think, about 3.5 hours that day, so it worked out good. Well, thanks for flying along with us. I appreciate that. Getting the IFR practice is just a fantastic thing to do. Keep your skills up. If you like these videos and appreciate what we do, please like and subscribe and share the videos with your friends and family. Share your love for aviation the way we do, and we can all learn from each other. I'm G36TN pilot. Appreciate you guys, and have a great day. Talk to you next time.